Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop. So today we are going to be continuing. This will be step 2, which we will be doing the grinding, or the filing if you will, and the hardening and tempering of this little slitting punch that we're making for smaller slit and drifted holes. So basically we've got this at 3/8 of an inch, or not 3/8 of an inch, but 3/16 of an inch in dimension this way, by about 1/8 inch in dimension this way as far as thickness. You'll have to excuse me, I wasn't prepared with the metric on this one, but you guys can figure that out. Drop it down in the comment section down below if you know what those measurements are in metric for those across the pond. I greatly appreciate my community that does that. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take and bring this into a point in this direction, just like you would a slitting chisel. So we need to first file it that way, coming up at a slight angle and putting a bevel on this. We want this bevel to be fairly steep at approximately a 60-degree bevel if we can, or just a little less than a 60-degree bevel. Come halfway with one side and then come in halfway with the other. Make sure to keep this square as you're doing it. You don't want one edge fatter than the other. You want them both to be the same all the way across. So again, try to keep the same bevel on both sides. It is imperative that you keep it about the same bevel, or the same amount of bevel on both sides, because if you do not, what will end up happening to you is this will want to wander. It'll want to drift to one side or the other. That's bad, if you haven't guessed. That is bad. Let me grab a file carder real quick. Okay. It's starting to fill up, my file is. For filing, we'll use the file carder to get those filings out of there. Clean up the surface, and we'll continue to file. Right at that 60-degree bevel. And do it again on this side as well. Again, we're trying to make this run down center of the tool here. You get one side too much, take a lot more on the other side until you get it centered up in the middle of the tool. Okay, so now we've got basically our little chisel tip here, if you will, and it's going to look a lot like a little chisel. That's good. Now what we need to do is we actually need to alleviate the peak here, if you will. So now that we've got this peak going, like so, we need to actually alleviate the corners of that. We need this to be oval when we're done. So I'm going to put a 45-degree bevel on it, 45 the other way. And what this will do is this will start then to be able to round this up around here. So we got a 45-degree bevel. Make sure it runs. They both come up, meet in the center. We're going to flip it around. We're going to do it to the other side as well. Hopefully y'all can see this just fine. "45-degree bevel and 45-degree bevel. Make sure that those, like I said, meet in the center. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So now that we've got our bevels all taken care of, now we're going to just radius those off by taking where they meet in the center, and we're just going to round it, just like so, and go right around the tool with our file. We're going to round those facets off into the flats, and that's going to round up that edge of the tool. Because remember, we're going to want to drift this round later on, and it doesn't help us if we have, when we go to drift it round, right? If we go to drift this round, and it's got these square corners in here, those are going to be weak points that will, that can fracture on us. So we don't want that. We want to round this off the best we can. So again, right around, just work that file right on around like so. Keep it nice and even. Work it back into the flats. And voila, your little slot punch is done. Now, with that being said, since we're going to be heat treating this, this is very sharp now. We do not want it this sharp when we go into the heat treat. We can always come in a little later and touch that up with a file, but we do not want it this sharp going into the heat treat. We want to take off this sharpness at this edge, so this way we do not cause a brittle spot right on this edge that'll end up having some chipping issues. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take a file stroke or two across the top and put just a small, ever so slightly, maybe a 32nd of an inch or a 64th of an inch flat across the top. So there we go. Now we got this little flat across the top. That'll prevent any sort of chipping that may end up in occurring. But that's basically how you file it. So now we got a nice round profile. Now you can take and file off these corners. You can round this in more. Round this whole cross section in here back in this area a lot more, and I'll probably do that off camera. It's just taking off anything that looks square and just rounding it up more. Although this won't be doing too much engaging with the metal, it might be a good ideal regardless. Now the next step, again, you're going to want to take and round off and file this off round. But I probably won't make you have to watch this whole thing, but I'll give you the general basis. Basically put, you want to go ahead and get your 45-degree bevels started on all your facets and make sure that it's squared up to the face. That's going to be loud, so I won't do that. Again, start with your 45-degree facets and bevels. And once you got those, you knock those corners off and round it into the rest of the piece. Not too hard, not too difficult. You just got to take your time with it and then round it up. I like a crowned tool, so I would suggest doing that. So without further ado, let's go get this thing hot. Bring it up to a critical temperature or a non-magnetic state, and then we will go in and do the actual hardening step of this process and the tempering. So now we're over at the forge. We got the fire pot pretty much packed nice and tightly here, so this way we can just slip this tool right in on top of a nice bed of coke and get a nice controlled heat on it. Now we want to bring this up ever so slowly to that non-magnetic state, as this is coil spring and we've done quite a bit of work on it, and we want to take and alleviate any stresses that happen to be in the material or present. I am a big fan of putting in the struck end of the material first, okay? I want to take and put the struck end of the tool into the fire first and bring that up to a critical temperature, or to a non-magnetic state, if you will, or just above a non-magnetic state. Then I will flip it around and bring the cutting edge up to meet the actual working end. The reason for this being is that if you heat up the cutting edge first, you can actually bring that up to where you get grain growth in the cutting edge, and therefore it will be weak and that cutting edge won't hold up for you. So you need to make sure that you bring that up to temp last. So bring up the struck end, then flip it around and put in the actual cutting edge end to bring it up for a few seconds to bring it up to that nice critical temperature, and then we will go in for the quench. Now, when I do these type tools, I favor a one-step process quench, and I've shown that in other videos in my chasing tool series, and I will show that in this video if you have not been privy to that. So we're going to bring this up, like I said, nice and slow to temp, and then we'll flip it, and we will be over at the actual quench tank. Okay, I've got this tool up to critical temperature. I'm about to pull it out. I've got it heated on both ends. We are going to quench the cutting edge first and then the struck end. We'll quench that cutting edge up to about an inch or a little over that, inch or two. And then we're going to quench the struck end. We want that to be hard as well. and then I just shine the surface of this with a stone, like a little sharpening stone. And we are waiting to see the temperature color change to a nice pale straw. If it's a pale straw or bronze color, you've got it. Go ahead and quench it at that temperature. So the center of the piece of the tool steel is actually going to heat treat and temper the rest of this. And I'm starting to just get up there to a pale straw now. Almost there. And we're good. So then we cool off the whole tool. So the secret behind this one-step heat treat here, just to eliminate any sort of confusion, is this is coil spring, and yes, I am hardening it in water. It is a water quenching steel. Most coil springs are. Some of them are not, so you do have to check them. But this particular coil spring steel and all the spring steels that I've had off of automotive so far have been a water quenching steel. I might have said oil there, so excuse me if I made that mistake in the video. But all of these are a water quench steel in order to take and get them hard. Now, you're going to say, Roy, why didn't you take that to a purple or something like that? It's because this is going to engage into hot work. So I need that to not really over temper at this stage, because then it can just go to dead soft after a few uses if you make the mistake of leaving it in the material too long. But basically that's how you heat treat it, harden and temper it, and now it's good to go. So now let's actually put this tool to use. I will clip out now, and I'll get a piece of steel hot, and I will use this on that piece of steel so we can see how it actually functions. One last thing I want to take and point out about doing this. This method is highly effective, it's speedy and it's efficient, but it is not a good method for all steels. Again, you have to know what steel you're working with and what it likes. If it likes being in water, put it in water. It's a bit of a farce about oil. That's come from the knife making field, because just about every knife gets quenched in oil these days. And that's just and again, that is a bit of a farce when it comes to actual tool making. It's based upon the steel that you're using is what quench medium you put it in. So without further ado, let's actually get to smithing and using this to slot punch a little hole. So this tool is best used if you can mark it from both sides first with a center punch mark and get a measurement on that. This tool is best used for that purpose, because you can find the center with the actual edge of the tool, and when you flip it over, you can cut in halfway, and then you can come back in and cut the other halfway down through. In this case, we're just going to basically be eyeballing it, and hopefully we come up close. If we fall short, however, we will get a rag in the material, and that's never any fun. But basically you can see how handy this is already. It's almost there. Now the only thing we have to do is go over to a small little, go to a Pritchel hole. Hopefully you have a small little Pritchel hole you can use. That's better. Something to back this up. And we need to punch out this little slug that you see stuck here. So I didn't quite hit it perfect, and that's why there's a little bit of rag there. But that's okay. But you guys can see now how you can put a very small slot punch hole now in a piece. So this tool is very, very handy. Let me take one more heat on this and see if I can't drive that little slug piece out of there. So I have a piece here off of a piece of leaf spring with a hole in the center of it. I'm basically just going to use this as a bolster plate. It was easy at hand, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. Bring this over, center it over there, and give that thing a tap. We are almost through this piece. We almost got this thing completely cut and cleaned out of the hole. Just a few more little taps here ought to have it loosed, and we're pretty much sheared out there. Just let it cool down a fuzz, and we'll go one more time here. So now it's cooled. We'll aim to the side that it's sticking on. Give it a pop or two. And it's still not wanting to come out. Like I said, I didn't have that on perfect, so that's why it still wants to hang in there a little bit. But the tool is basically working exactly like it's supposed to. It's cutting down through really good. The only thing we have is that little tidbit on there. It's held on by that rag because I missed it by just a little bit. So I'll have to shear that out a little bit better here in the next heat or so. And again, we'll see how that comes out. There we go. I just had to break it up a little bit. So now we'll go ahead and come through this thing with a drift, a little small drift, and drift this out a little larger. Okay, now we're using that same bolster plate, just going over the hardy hole, and we're going to drift this out a lot larger, focusing on a little piece that got left of that rag in the hole, and just drift that straight down. This little stainless steel drift. So now you can make really tiny slit and drifted holes in stock that you otherwise would not be able to put a hole that size into. This is a very handy method and a very handy tool to learn, and I really hope you enjoyed this video, because that's it for today. As always, thank you all for watching. If you have any interest in seeing how this tool was made or this tool was made, I will put some links to those in the description down below. As always, God bless you, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.